So let's get right into it. This is a story about one of the most incredible transformations of belief you can possibly imagine. It really makes you ask a terrifying question. What happens when your entire world, your entire faith, everything you thought you knew, just goes silent? This whole thing starts in a time and a place that has become a synonym for pure darkness.
We're in Budapest, Hungary. The year is 1944. The Nazis have rolled in, and the destruction of Hungarian Jewry is happening with a speed and a brutal efficiency that is just mind-boggling. And it's from right inside this inferno that a book is going to be born, scribbled and hiding on whatever scraps of paper could be found, a voice literally crying out from the abyss.
So who was this voice? Well, let's meet the man at the center of our story, Rabbi Yisachar Shlomo Teichel. And you have to understand, he wasn't some kind of revolutionary or a radical thinker. In fact, he was the exact opposite.
To really get how huge this change was for him, you've got to know where he was coming from. Rabbi Teichel was a Haredi, what you might call an ultra-Orthodox scholar. And in his world, Zionism, the whole idea of humans getting together to create a Jewish state, that was basically heresy. It was seen as forcing God's hand, a rebellion against the divine plan. For him and for his community, this wasn't politics. This was theology. But this deeply, deeply held belief was about to slam headfirst into a reality so catastrophic that it would shatter the very foundations of his faith. All of a sudden, the holy, pious act of just waiting on God started to feel like something else entirely, something sinful. I mean, he was facing an impossible theological crisis. On the one hand, you have this belief that's been around for centuries. Just wait for the Messiah. God will save his people when he's ready, with miracles and wonders. But then on the other hand, you have the brutal reality of 1944, where waiting meant getting rounded up, deported, and sent to the gas chambers. From his hiding spot, watching his entire world go up in flames, Teichel had this horrifying realization. Passive faith had become fatal.
You can just feel the agony in his words. He's looking back with this unbearable regret, realizing that if his community had just worked with those early Zionists instead of shunning them, there might have been a safe place to go, a place that could have saved countless lives. For him, this wasn't just some casual observation. It was a confession of a catastrophic, deadly mistake.
So, how did he do it? How could a man of such deep faith possibly justify embracing a movement that he once believed was a sin? Well, he did it by diving deep into Jewish tradition and finding something, a radical new way of seeing things. He found his answer in this really cryptic phrase from the Talmud, afot temeim, which literally translates to unclean birds. Now, normally, this is just some obscure bit of rabbinic lore nobody pays much attention to. But for Teichel, hiding in that attic in Budapest, it became the key to understanding God's plan in a world where the miracles had stopped. So he asked, who are these unclean birds? And here it is, his absolutely shocking conclusion. The unclean birds, these unlikely messengers of God's will, they were the secular, non-religious Zionists. The very people his community had written off. The socialists, the atheists, the pioneers building farms on dusty land, they were the ones, in his new understanding, who were doing God's holy work, even if they had no idea. This just flipped everything completely on its head. Redemption wasn't going to come pouring down from the heavens in a flash of divine light. No. In a time when God seemed completely absent, Teichel argued redemption had to start from below. It had to be built with human hands, imperfect, flawed, even unclean hands. Suddenly, practical action, like farming the land and building a home, wasn't a sin, it was the highest form of prayer. But Rabbi Teichel didn't just stop with this new theological idea. Oh no. Armed with this new conviction, he turned his focus right back around on the leaders of his own community. And he did not hold back. His book becomes this absolutely searing indictment of their inaction. He basically argued that the leadership failed on three major fronts, and they were all connected. First, they confused being passive with being pious. That led them to actively discourage any efforts to build a safe haven in the land of Israel. And maybe worst of all, they created this culture of contempt, shaming anyone who tried to take practical steps as some kind of heretic. Man, you can just feel the anger and the frustration in his words. He says this excessive caution, this idea that it's better to sit and do nothing, wasn't holy at all. It was a fatal error in judgment that left their people completely exposed when the storm finally broke. And the good things they were missing out on, he's not talking about comforts. He's talking about life itself. And then he asks it. The one question that just hangs over this entire book, a question that must have been burning a hole in his soul as he wrote it. Who is responsible for all this death? It's a direct challenge aimed right at the religious leaders who had told everyone to just stay put, to wait, to pray, all while the trains were rolling toward Auschwitz.
He connects their inaction directly to being culpable. He pulls out this powerful concept from the Bible, where if a murder happens and you don't know who did it, the town elders have to come forward and declare, "Our hands did not spill this blood." Tichtel says that the rabbis who stood in the way of Jews finding safety, they could no longer make that claim. Their inaction had consequences, and those consequences were written in blood.
But here's the thing that gives his critique its almost unbearable moral power. He doesn't just point fingers at everybody else. He turns that harsh light of judgment right back around, squarely on himself. This is just stunning. Right in the middle of this theological and political firestorm he's creating, he just stops and says, "I was one of them. I was wrong. The very ideas that I am now condemning, I used to preach them myself." He admits that he also found the whole Zionist project despicable. I mean, what an incredible act of intellectual and spiritual courage. And that's really what takes this book from being a simple argument to a powerful testament. It's not some academic exercise. It's a confession. It's an act of repentance. It is a desperate cry for a new path forward, written while his world was literally ending around him. Tragically, Rabbi Tichtel was murdered on a transport train just weeks before the war ended. But his book, his voice from the darkness, it survived. And so it leaves us with this final haunting question. Rabbi Tichtel's story isn't just about theology or history. It's about the terrifying and maybe awesome power of reality to force us to question the things we hold most sacred. What does it actually take for a person to look at the very core of their identity, the bedrock of their whole world, and have the courage to say, "I was wrong"?